Hello everyone, I am the Bandit Kirby, and welcome to my channel, The Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic valuing format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews under the deck text. On this episode of The Brewery, I'll be discussing my take on a new commander from Final Fantasy, Diamond Weapon. If you like my content, the very best way you can help support the channel is with my Patreon. There are plenty of perks for being a patron, such as early access to certain videos, exclusive deck text, gifts, and more for as little as $1. You can also become a channel member for just 99 cents. Show off your support with a logo next to your name and exclusive emojis. Or you can always just support my channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. I put out a video every Monday, so you don't want to miss out. You can join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Diamond Weapon is an 8/8 artifact creature elemental with reach and immune for 7 generic and 2 green. While this is already decently costed for an uncommon legendary creature, there's more. This spell costs 1 generic less for each permanent card in your graveyard. So yes, this will also reduce commander tax the longer a game goes. This means that you can potentially cast this way sooner, as if this being mono green wouldn't accelerate your mana faster than your opponents anyways. While it is very possible to go with a self-mill strategy in mono green thanks to Dredge and other self-milling sources, I decided to bypass that route and include a lot of self-sacrificing permanents that can give me value instead. For example, the deck is running 12 fetch lands, but these aren't just the high-level fetch lands. You can also run the more humbler ones like Evolving Wilds, Ceramorphic Expanse, etc. I'm even running the Streets of New Capenna fetch lands since they also gave me 1 life while at it. Sure, this might seem slow, but they don't take up slots in the deck anyways and can also help thin our library of lands. And in any case, if you have nothing left to fetch for, you have Minor Cradle of Growth lets us tap these lands for mana, so they're still useful that way also. So it does more than just making our mono green mana base absolutely consistent. Moving on are similar effects via Wayfarer's Bauble, Sakura Tribe Elder, Burnished Heart, Canoptic Wraith, and Navigation Orb. These do take up slots in the deck, but also have a built-in sacrifice outlet that lets us ramp for basic lands. This helps us ramp twofold since we reduce the generic cost by 1 while also getting us up a land. You can achieve the same with channeling Greater Tanuki and cycling Krosan Tusker. Doing either will get you a basic land straight to the battlefield. Sure, it's not as powerful as something like Cultivate for the same cost, but at least with Krosan Tusker you draw a card. Plus, these being creatures in the graveyard will reduce Diamond Weapon's generic cost by 1. So in a sense, they are ramping you better than Cultivate or Kadama's Reach does, at least when it counts for our commander. Traverse the Outlands can also massively accelerate us via land-based ramp, but this is a sorcery, so it doesn't help Diamond Weapon. In this case, our commander helps it by getting us 8 basic lands minimum for our library if we resolve this while controlling our commander. Do not sleep on this card for your own deck. The deck is running 12 forests though, so if you've already ramped or fetched for most of them, this might not do so much for you in the late game. But if you get this early on, you'll be golden, especially since only absolute mass land destruction / denial effects gets rid of basic lands. Boseiju Who Endures and Demolition Field can also find themselves in the graveyard all while providing interaction without taking up slots in the deck. Granted, if you need these for mana, keep them as mana generating lands. But if you're able to use them for their true purpose, go for it. Diamond Weapon will be thankful. We can still cast our high-costed commander the old-fashioned way with cards like Emerald Medallion and Defiler of Vigor. The Medallion is amazing for most of our deck and has a great cost reduction effect for just 2 generic itself. The Defiler costs 5 mana, but it essentially turns one of the green pips in a card's casting cost into green Phyrexian mana, so it also helps reduce cost. Not only that, but whenever we cast a green permanent spell, we put a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control, making the rest of our board get increasingly more dangerous. Nikto's Shrine to Nyx is great once we do have a lot of green pips in play. Then we can really cast our commander easily. You can use Soul Ring to pay for this or for our commander in general. Naturally, this mana rock is going to be here even though it's the only one. Apart from Emerald Medallion, green doesn't really need help via artifact sources. So what do we do once we cast our massive threat early on? Well, keep in mind that if you have trigger-happy opponents, them destroying your stuff also inevitably helps cast our commander. So let them blow up everything they want, even our commander if they wanted to. It might still only cost double green depending on our graveyard. But one massive way to make the most of our massive leader is by drawing massive amounts of cards. Life's Legacy, Momentous Fall, Disciple of Freyalise, Return of the Wild Speaker, Soul's Majesty, Lifestream's Blessing, Rishkar's Expertise, Season of Gathering, and Last March of the Ents are all dependent on how big the chosen creature is. Fortunately, the default settings on Diamond Weapon is 8/8, so at the very least we'll be drawing 8 cards. But you know that 8 power is meek when it comes to Voltron commanders. But don't worry, we'll see how we make it even more dangerous later on. Some of these effects require a sacrifice, which doesn't matter because commander tax is a generic cost, so as long as we have enough permanents in our graveyard, it'll only still cost double green to recast. Garruk Primal Hunter also has a loyalty ability with a similar outcome. However, if you do this the moment you play him, you can't keep him around. While 5 mana to draw 8 cards is still an amazing investment, if you're able to wait, you can keep him around by first using his first ability before the second one. His actual ultimate is also amazing because the deck gets its lands out quite quickly, so getting a 6/6 token for each one we control is something to scoff at. Hunter's Insight and Hunter's Prowess are spells dependent on combat damage. While the deck has ways to ensure our commander gets through, sometimes opponents don't care if you swing at their planeswalker over them, especially with such a massive threat. That's where Hunter's Insight shines because it's an instant and it triggers even if you hit a planeswalker. Hunter's Prowess is unfortunately a sorcery, but it does grant +3/+3 and trample, so it might even matter if you cast it before combat. The pump and trample might be enough to kill off the defending player anyways. The deck draws into so many cards that will like Worry Towers included, all without taking up a slot on the deck, especially in a mono green deck like this one. I love this card for decks like these. Bounder's Enclave and War Room are 2 more lands that don't take up slots in the deck that can make the most of the nature of our commander. We'll basically almost always draw a card with the Enclave, and War Room only requires 1 life as part of its activation cost. Going back to combat damage, Buster Sword also makes the most of combat damage triggers by helping us cast spells for free. Imagine hitting an opponent with our massive commander and then casting something like March of the Ents for free thanks to it. Absolute madness. Or generating a massive army of tokens thanks to Scepter of Celebration. This also triggers on combat damage but makes our lives easier by not only granting a non-negligible boost of +2/+0, but it also grants trample, helping our commander really need to be blocked to prevent that commander damage getting through. While this might help us keep up blockers or eventually go wide, Silent Arbiter makes it so that we can safely rely on our Voltron strategy, especially if our commander has trample or menace and our opponents can only block with 1 creature. Unless they have something equally big, they will lose their blocker and they will get hit. Or we can go with synergistic interaction via Lothlorien Blade and Nemesis Mask. If an opponent were to have annoying creatures, simply attack while equipping this blade will have Diamond Weapon deal its power to that creature before the blocker step even happens. Granted, Diamond Weapon doesn't care about combat damage, so things like Infect and Wither mean nothing to it. But getting rid of annoying utility creatures without them having to block is amazing. Or you can force their board to block with Nemesis Mask. If Diamond Weapon had both Death Touch and Trample, you could potentially wipe an opponent's entire board in combat, but more on boons later on. Contest of Claws also provides similar interaction, but it has the added bonus of giving us value if the difference in power was really high. After killing the creature, we get to discover X cards where X is at excess damage. Again, if Diamond Weapon had Death Touch, this spell does a ton of work. Lastly, apart from the previously mentioned Traverse the Outlands, Selvala Heart of the Wilds and Bighorn Rancher also make the most of Diamond Weapon's stats by tapping for an absolute ton of mana. I tend to steer clear of mana dorks as acceleration due to how weak they are against removal, but even if you're able to tap these just once in a game, the mana they generate while controlling our commander is too good to pass up. Alright, so finally, how are we going to make Diamond Weapon even more dangerous? Well, for starters, Cathedral of War and Okina, Temple of the Grandfathers don't take up slots in the deck and are very cheap ways of pumping it, even if ever so slightly. But as you've undoubtedly experienced in one too many commander games, sometimes that sole point of damage is the difference between victory and defeat. Rogue's Passage, Brotherhood Regalia, and Whisper Silk Cloak make our commander outright unblockable. The land doesn't take up a spell slot in the deck, while the equipment also have the added bonus of providing forms of protection. Word 2 isn't as strong as Outright Shroud, but it's not nothing neither. Plus, it lets us target Diamond Weapon with our own effects. Witch's Clinic and Basilisk's Collar giving our commander lifelink is a great way to help buffer against that inevitable clackback from opponents salty at getting smacked by Diamond Weapon. The Collar giving Death Touch is an overkill on an 8/8 commander. It's absolutely insane when combined with the trample provided by either Rancor, Haunted Cloak, or Clawterra of Kalsisma, Nylia God of the Hunt, and Akroma's Memorial. Granted, these also provide other pumps or boons, but the most important keyword here is trample. We want our commander to get through, whether unblockability or trample. As a bonus, Nylia is an amazing mana sink for when we're able to tap down things like Nykthos, Selvala, or Bighorn Rancher. Berserk, Tifa's Limit Break, Moon of Boseiju, Tivar the Pummeler, Overwhelming Stampede, Unnatural Growth, Pathbreaker Ibex, Zopandrel, Hunger Dominus, Thickest in the Thicket, and the Skullport Nexus help make Diamond Weapon absolutely massive, game-endingly so. Maybe even your whole board while at it. These cards are what makes this mono-green Voltron deck really a mono-green Voltron deck. Berserk has you destroy the creature afterwards. Shame it's going to only cost just 2 green mana to recast from the command zone, assuming it's not indestructible by then. Tifa's Limit Break costs a whopping 8 total mana in order to triple Diamond Weapon's power and toughness. That's the same amount of mana Selvala or Bighorn or Rancher could tap for if able to. Also, 8 mana is nothing in a green deck. Thickest in the Thicket and the Skullport Nexus might only double, but that's not nothing on its own. Sure, tripling will guarantee a kill, but doubling still does a ton of work. As a bonus, the enchantment can also draw us cards, and the artifact can create a massive fungus whenever a large creature dies. So if we're sacrificing Diamond Weapon for value, this replaces it with a huge fungus token. So good. And that's assuming you're not combining multiple doubling effects, granting you exponential power. Boon of Boseiju might not seem like something chainable because it's only tied to mana value and not power. However, even if Diamond Weapon has that cost reduction effect, it still has a mana value of 9. So, for just 2 mana, you gave it +9/+9 and untapped it. Don't sleep on this one. Tangleweave Armor does something similar, but it at least enters attached to a Phyrexian Germ token that becomes a 9/9 for just the 4 mana of casting this equipment. Not bad, right? Now, imagine then spending 4 mana later on to equip this to Diamond Weapon. Nightmare fuel for your opponents. Staff of Titania also provides a similar pump, but only depending on how many forests you control. Good thing it creates Forest Dryads with its trigger. Another good thing the deck is mono green and running him via Cradle of Growth. This thing makes Diamond Weapon massive, all before inevitably doubling or possibly tripling its stats. Unnatural Growth and Zopandrel also pump our whole board, but only by each creature's own stats. So while that might not do much for a bunch of 1/1 citizens, utility creatures or mana dorks, it'll definitely do something for Diamond Weapon. Speaking of 1/1 creature tokens, remember Staff of Celebration? Well, Tivar, Overwhelming Stampede, and Pathbreaker Ibex make it so our entire board of creatures gets pumped by as big as Diamond Weapon is. And that's just a floor of +8/+8, but it happened to be bigger than that, so will our board. And the Stampede and Ibex take it a step further by also granting Trample. Amazing win cons here. Mutating Sawtusk Demolisher under Diamond Weapon is another great way to give it Trample. However, not only that, but that 4 mana is also paying for a type of beast within effect when we do. So not only are we making Diamond Weapon more dangerous, but we're getting rid of a problematic non-creature permanent. Speaking of, Saga of the Dryads, Beast Within, Bramble Crush, and Terastodon also get the job done. While we've already seen plenty of synergistic interaction in the deck, it's important to remember that we have to run everything we can, especially in a mono green deck since we don't really have a ton of options. But these are all amazing regardless, especially Terastodon since it can become a massive beater in its own right. Back to boosting Diamond Weapon, the deck is also running Commander's Plate, Swiftfoot Boots, Champion's Helm, and Mithril Coat. While our commander has built-in protection via its immune ability, it's not immune to non-combat damage, targeted removal, or board wipes. While it will almost always cost only 2 green mana to recast, you also don't want it nerfed with an ability that keeps it in play but useless. Emerald Dragon is also included because sending it on an adventure is something opponents won't expect from a mono green deck. Dissonant Wave is particularly useful as stifling anyone dropping a Bojuka Bog. I'd like to keep my graveyard full of permanents, thank you very much. It's also a 4/4 flyer with Trample, which isn't nothing, especially if we can slap some equipment on it and exponentiate its power. General's Regalia and Pariah's Shield are amazing ways to make the most of Diamond Weapon's immune ability. Even if we're redirecting damage, the source of that damage is still combat damage. So if we were to get smacked by like 1,000,000 power in combat, it will all go to Diamond Weapon via Pariah's Shield. Since it's combat damage, it's prevented. Same with General's Regalia, although unfortunately we still have to pay 3 mana per source, but still, it's good to include. This view is just an idea of how to build around Diamond Weapon. Like I mentioned in the intro, you can go the self-mill route if you wanted to, but I prefer to make the most of all the cards in my deck while still being able to reduce that massive casting cost as quickly as possible. If you're interested in the deck list of this spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the brewers, for their patronage. I also want to thank any channel members. Your membership is greatly appreciated. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of The Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am the Mended Kirby, and happy brewing.